When people ask where strength comes from, most assume the answer is uniform. First, childhood, second. They imagine discipline beginning in boot camp or ROTC drills, not in whispered arguments behind hallway walls, or in the quiet moments where you learn that silence is sometimes the only safe doorway out of conflict. I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, a place where military culture soaked into everything from the radio stations to the neighborhood barbecues. Soldiers in uniform were as common as grocery clerks, and kids like me learned early to stand a little straighter, speak a little clearer, and show respect for rules we did not always understand but instinctively obeyed. My parents divorced when I was 10. That was the year I first heard adults say the word custody like it was a battlefield. Our father, a long-haul truck driver who ran the Texas to Georgia route, left with promises to visit on weekends that turned into once a month and then every other holiday. Distance became his habit. My mother stayed, but presence is not always the same thing as support. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, and clung to the easier child, the louder one, the one who demanded attention and rewarded it with affection when she felt like it and punishment when she did not. That child was Erica, my twin. Same birthday, same eyes, same last name, but everything else about us moved in opposite directions, as if fate had flipped a coin before we opened our eyes for the first time. I was the quiet one, the one who did not slam doors or cry to be seen. Teachers liked me. I sat in the front row, finished assignments early, and learned that excellence was a shield when love was unreliable. My notebooks were neat. My bed always made my shoes aligned, like I had inspected them even before the Army ever entered my life. Erica was sunshine to strangers and storm to anyone who shared a roof with her. Charming, quick to laugh, able to make adults melt with a single pout or sigh. But beneath the charisma lived something sharper, more calculating. She watched people the way a chess player studies openings and weaknesses, learning exactly which moves brought praise, which brought power, and which let her twist a moment into something she could use later. Even as children, she knew how to take center stage. When she wanted attention, she got it. When she wanted sympathy, tears appeared on cue. And when she wanted me quiet, she found ways to make sure I stayed that way. The first time I realized she was dangerous, I was 12. We were racing down the stairs to get ready for school because she had taken too long in the bathroom again, and I made the mistake of brushing past her. No shove, no taunt, just the innocent impatience of a kid worried about missing the bus. Halfway down the steps, I felt a hand at my back, and then the world flipped. Wooden edges carpet burn a dull thud at the bottom. I remember lying there stunned, looking at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me while my lungs fought to pull in air. Erica stood at the top of the stairs, with a face so perfectly arranged in concern it could have been carved from a picture frame. The sound she made, that gasp so delicate and precise, still rings in parts of my memory I keep guarded. Mom rushed over, fussed, checked my elbows, my knees made sure nothing was broken, and then scolded us both for roughhousing. Erica cried, swearing she did not mean to swearing. She reached to catch me, not push. My mother stroked her hair while I sat silent, feeling a bruise bloom on my back and a colder one settle somewhere deeper. I learned something that morning. Sometimes danger smiles at the people meant to protect you, and they smile back, convinced the threat is harmless because it shares their last name. My father called that week. I did not tell him. I rarely did. Truck stops and phone lines are hard places to plant seeds of truth. He wanted us to be strong, wanted us to be united, told me to look after my sister as if loyalty were a duty stamped on my birth certificate. I tried. I always tried. It is what oldest siblings do, and even though we were born minutes apart, everyone acted as if I carried responsibility she never had to touch. Erica understood that. She wielded it like a secret weapon, knowing I would absorb the blame to keep peace, knowing I hated conflict enough to swallow my own hurt. That house taught me discipline before the Army ever could. I learned how to hold my face still when disappointment settled in my chest like sand. I learned how to organize my world so chaos had no room to spread. I learned to read people quickly, to anticipate anger, to sidestep emotional ambushes. And above all, I learned that some battles start long before you put on a uniform. Childhood is where I learned my first rules of engagement. Speak softly, move smart, Build inner strength when outer support is unreliable. Survive quietly. We lived close enough to the base that helicopters passing overhead rattled the windows on clear afternoons. I used to watch them and imagine a world where structure meant protection, where leadership meant fairness, where hard work earned respect, not resentment. Erica never looked at them the same way. She looked at people, not missions, looked at power, not purpose. The seeds were planted long before adulthood. She needed attention like oxygen. I craved stability like air. Two branches from the same tree growing in different directions, one reaching for light, one building roots to keep from being pulled out by wind. Some families talk about sisterhood like a gift. In ours, it was a quiet war waged behind closed doors while the world outside believed in perfect twin stories. I thought distance and time would soften those edges. I thought service and duty would shape my path and let hers drift away from mine. I thought adulthood meant safety. I was wrong. Some conflicts follow you no matter where you go, and some enemies learn your weaknesses long before they ever learn to lie to the world. There is a moment in life when you realize the road you walk is yours alone, even if someone once walked beside you with the same face and the same childhood memories. For me, that moment arrived in high school when a recruiter visited our junior class. I had always known discipline felt like a language I could speak fluently, and service called to something steady in me. ROTC offered structure purpose, a path out of a house where silence felt safer than truth. I signed my name quietly without ceremony, as if slipping through a doorway into a life I hoped would make sense. Erica scoffed when I told her. Army life boots early mornings rules. She rolled her eyes, tossed her hair, and said she was too smart to let people tell her what to do. She claimed she was destined for something bigger, though she never said what that something was, only that it would be different from me. We graduated, and I went to college on an ROTC scholarship at UNC Wilmington. Every morning, I laced my boots before the sun rose, practiced drills with cadets who would become brothers and sisters in service, studied intelligence theory and leadership, and found a calm in routines most people would have hated. Erica stayed in Fayetteville. At first, she called, often spinning stories about friends and parties and the excitement of freedom. She bounced between part-time jobs, declaring each one temporary because she was waiting for the right opportunity. When bills piled up, she called again, sounding smaller, asking if I could help until she figured things out. And I did. Over and over. Childhood habits do not vanish with uniforms. The guilt thread woven into me back when we were children tugged hard. I believed if I was generous enough, patient enough, loyal enough, I could rewrite history and finally earn that closeness I had chased since we were kids. During senior year, while I trained for commissioning and memorized briefings on military ethics, she was living with a boyfriend who never worked, posting pictures that looked glamorous until the background details betrayed reality. A mattress on the floor, blinds half closed to hide an empty parking lot, borrowed clothes disguised as success. I remember flying home for a long weekend before graduation. She asked if I could help her cover her rent because her boyfriend had promised a job that never materialized and everything felt unfair. I handed her money and listened as she complained about how I was lucky, how things always worked out for me, how she could not catch a break. I did not correct her. It never felt safe to challenge her emotions. Commissioning day came, gold bars pinned on my shoulders. I felt pride bloom, deep, steady earned. Erica texted a single sentence. Must be nice playing soldier for attention. I stared at the words longer than I should have, feeling something old and tired tighten inside me. I responded with silence because arguing with someone determined to misunderstand you is a battle with no victory. After officer basic and intelligence training in Fort Huachuca, I deployed to Kuwait supporting Operation Spartan Shield. Desert sun, long nights, careful analysis of information most civilians would never see. I learned to trust my instincts, to find patterns in chaos, to hold responsibility with quiet steadiness. In my spare moments, I emailed Erica, asked how she was doing, sent money when she claimed something urgent happened, and convinced myself I was helping. But help turned into habit, and habit turned into expectation. She learned that my uniform came with paychecks, and my loyalty came with guilt. I returned stateside more grounded, more committed to service. My peers moved forward with careers, families, plans. Erica drifted. New apartments, new relationships. New reasons she could not keep a job or finish a course or take that opportunity she insisted was waiting. Whenever she needed, I answered. It took years for resentment to reveal itself. It started quietly, comments during visits. You think wearing a uniform makes you better. Whenever I promoted or earned recognition, she went silent for days. When she resurfaced, there was always a request behind her sweetness. A bill, a crisis, a new beginning that somehow required me. Social media became her stage. She curated drama like art, posting compliments for others while swiping at me in ways only someone who knew my buttons could craft. Playing warrior, huh? Hope the cameras are rolling. I tried to ignore it. I told myself service meant understanding, that compassion was duty, that family deserved patience. I did not see the envy hardening in her eyes during holidays. I did not hear the bitterness in her voice when she asked if deployments made me feel important. Looking back, I see every sign clearly. Resentment does not scream in the beginning. It whispers. It smiles with tight corners. It jokes with sharp edges disguised as humor. While I built a career through discipline, she built a narrative where success was proof I had abandoned her, where my achievements were personal insults, where every promotion widened a wound she never tried to heal. The path split, and I kept hoping one day she would turn back and walk beside me, willingly proud of me the way I wanted to be proud of her. But some people do not want shared success. They want shared suffering. They do not climb with you. They wait for gravity to pull you down. Every time I answered her call, I fed a belief she carried like armor. I was her safety net, her fallback, her proof she never had to take accountability. Meanwhile, I carried a secret hope that if I served hard enough, lived honorably enough, I could finally feel like the strong one, the protector, the sister who did not need saving but could offer it. I did not realize then that trying to save someone who resents your strength is not mercy. It is surrender, and surrender only feeds hunger in those who confuse love with entitlement. I walked forward. She stayed still, convinced the world owed her movement. And resentment, once planted, grows fast in shadows. The day before my promotion felt like standing in the eye of a storm. Fort Liberty was unusually still, that heavy quiet that settles over a place right before something changes. Soldiers moved with practiced rhythm across the grounds, boots striking pavement in sync, the cadence of service carrying through morning mist. Flags stirred lazily against a Carolina sky, and the familiar hum of helicopters in the distance felt almost reassuring, like the installation itself was breathing steady for all of us. I reported early for rehearsal on the parade field. My dress uniform felt crisp, heavy with meaning. New rank set to be pinned gold oak leaves that marked years of decisions, deployments, sacrifices seen and unseen. Colonel Hayes stood at the reviewing line, hands clasped behind his back, scanning the formation like a man who had guided hundreds through milestones like this and still felt every one. When I approached, he gave a rare, genuine smile. "Major Brooks, it suits you. Not many officers your age earn this with such consistent distinction." He did not say what he told me privately months earlier after reading my performance file. Leadership is not volume or presence. It is steadiness when others falter. You don't lead to be seen. You lead to serve. I had carried those words with me like a quiet oath. As we ran through the ceremony order, he stepped beside me, voice low. "Your husband would be proud. Your strength honors him." I felt the familiar ache then. Not sharp, but deep, a hollow that reminded me love can be powerful and brief in the same breath. My husband Daniel had never worn a uniform, but understood mine. He fought his battle not on foreign soil, but in quiet hospital rooms, chemotherapy bags, and whispered prayers marking time until the end, a passing that left me carrying both grief and determination. Serving, after losing him, had felt right, like living for both of us. Loss made me stronger, not bitter. Or so I believed. That afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing ceremony notes and answering final emails. The phone buzzed. Erica. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, feeling the familiar tug of obligation mixed with a heaviness I could not quite name. When I answered, her voice sounded light, practiced, sweet enough to fool anyone who never listened closely. "Big day tomorrow, right?" Then came the bite sugar sliding off the edge. "Must feel nice knowing the whole army is going to clap for you." I kept my tone calm, controlled. It is not about applause. It is about service and honor. She hummed a sound too soft to trust. So, what time exactly? Would not want to miss the spectacle. The word spectacle sat wrong. She was not asking to attend. She was gathering information. It felt like she was mapping terrain, not supporting. Something in me shifted then, a prickle at the back of my neck. That uneasy feeling soldiers get when they sense movement before they hear it. I told her the schedule was not final yet. She paused. "You always think you are so careful," said like a joke but heavy beneath. Before I could respond, she laughed lightly and hung up. I stared at the silent phone, a cold ripple moving through me. It is irrational to fear family, I told myself. It is loyalty to worry about their feelings. It is kindness to answer even when conversation drains you. Yet something felt off, and that instinct, the one honed in briefing rooms and on deployment, whispered danger in the quietest tone. Evening came and the air cooled. I changed into running gear, stepping outside to clear my head the way I always did before major decisions or moments. Movement steadies me, lets thoughts organize and fall into place. I ran past barracks lit with soft interior lights, soldiers laughing near the PX, someone tossing a football on the grass. A normal base night. Safe, familiar. But beneath the normal was tension, the silent hum of anticipation I could not shake. As I turned down a less crowded path near the motor pool, I felt it again, that prickle and awareness at the edge of vision. I glanced over my shoulder, saw nothing but quiet road and tree shadow. Still, my breathing shifted not out of fear, but readiness. Old training surfaced. When you have spent time overseas, you know the difference between nerves and instinct. Instinct does not whisper. It warns. I slowed near the bench overlooking the small memorial garden dedicated to fallen soldiers. Names etched in stone-soft light illuminating sacrifice. Daniel's absence felt sharper there. I sat catching my breath, letting memory and purpose intertwine. Tomorrow I would stand in front of my formation, honor my oath, and wear the rank he never got to see me earn. I whispered to the quiet air, "I hope I make you proud." A sound broke the stillness, then soft like gravel shifting under a hesitant foot. I turned quickly. Empty path. Nothing but still trees and a flickering lamp. I waited, pulse steady but heightened senses searching. The sound did not come again, but the feeling stayed curling low in my stomach. Something was coming. I could feel it. Service teaches readiness. Life had taught me vigilance. And somewhere in the space between those two truths, a shadow from my past was moving closer, silent and determined. I stood slowly, adjusted my breathing, and walked back toward the barracks, calm on the outside, every nerve alert beneath. I had no idea that within 24 hours, instinct would become proof, suspicion would become truth, and the line between family and enemy would disappear forever. Night can feel different on a military installation. Out in the civilian world, evening carries laughter from porches, the glow of storefronts, cars rolling leisurely through neighborhoods. On base, there is discipline, even in quiet. Lights cut evenly across barracks, footsteps follow familiar patterns, and shadows stand still as if honoring the routine. That night, the road near the training field looked calm under pale street lamps, the air still and clean, like a breath held too long. My running shoes tapped lightly against pavement, my pace steady, my thoughts settled into rhythm. Tomorrow, I would pin on new rank stand at attention, raise my hand to acknowledge everything earned over years of focus and sacrifice. I replayed that moment in my mind like a film reel I had waited decades to watch. I slowed near the motor pool, pausing for water and stretching my shoulder as a breeze brushed through pine branches overhead. The installation slept around me familiar ordered, as if wrapped in its own quiet oath. I checked my watch and looked toward the barracks. Lights glowed faintly in several windows, silhouettes of soldiers unwinding after long duty days. Comforting, predictable, safe. Then headlights flicked off at the far end of the road. No engine hum, no sound of gravel shifting under tires, just a sudden absence of light where a vehicle had been moments before. I noticed it not fear, just awareness. Training sharpens perception until even silence feels weighted with information. I stood still listening. Cricket's distant laughter from the rec area, the hum of an AC unit somewhere near the motor pool office. Normal. I exhaled slowly and resumed jogging. The pavement stretched ahead like a ribbon catching light. Something in me stayed alert, not tense, but focused the way soldiers sense when air changes by instinct alone. A split second later, the night shattered. Not with chaos, not with shouts, but with a single sharp crack that cut the air like a blade. For a heartbeat, the world paused. Then heat flared across my shoulder, sudden and disorienting, and the ground rushed up toward me. I hit hard, my palms scraping rough pavement knees, jolting on impact. My breath punched out of my lungs, and a ringing filled my ears like feedback in a headset. Training overrides shock before emotion ever has time to form. I rolled toward the curb, dragging my body on instinct, arm braced against pain, eyes scanning darkness. Movement first, pain second. Always. A second crack split the quiet, tearing through stillness with precise menace closer this time. I pressed low to the pavement, inching toward the concrete median like the world depended on those inches. My fingers brushed warm fabric near my collarbone and came away smeared, not dripping, but slick enough to ground reality. A deep breath, then another. Not panic. Control. Count to 4, inhaling, pause, exhale to 6. Combat breathing. Settle adrenaline before it can steal clarity. I pressed my hand against the wound, steady pressure, every motion measured. I scanned the road again, searching for shadows or movement, but saw nothing, only the empty stretch of asphalt lit by quiet lamps. A strange thought came to me, unbidden and unsettling in its simplicity. I had survived deployment. I did not expect to fight for my life here. My shoulder throbbed, steady heat radiating outward, my breath measured against the weight of the moment. I listened intently for footsteps or an engine revving back to life. Still nothing. Whoever had been there was either gone or watching. Neither option comforted me. My vision sharpened under adrenaline edges, crisp colors muted but precise. The bark of distant laughter faded, replaced by steady airflow from my controlled breathing. Time stretched in unfamiliar ways, seconds elongating like they feared being forgotten. I reached for my phone, fingers stiff grip awkward. Dialing with shaky precision, I reported location and injury in clipped, practiced sentences. No panic in my voice, only purpose. Years of discipline filtered every word. As I waited for help, I kept my eyes forward, shoulders low, instincts telling me movement could draw attention. I spoke to myself in my mind the way I used to during field exercises. Stay calm. Stay aware. You will not let this be the end. Blue lights swept across the road in the distance, then multiplied. Tires skidding lightly, gravel shifting under boots, radios crackling. Military police voices rose coordinated and concise. They approached in formation weapons ready, scanning shadows. I raised my good hand, slightly palm open. Identification, not surrender. They reached me, and voices softened, but urgency remained. Major Brooks, hold still. You are safe. We have you. I felt hands helping me sit up, steadying me, while another reinforced pressure on my shoulder. Everything blurred for a second, not from fear, but from relief so sudden it nearly knocked the breath from me again. Sirens blended with authoritative commands and the steady thump of boots securing perimeter. Code red. Medical inbound. Another set of hands guided me to a stretcher, the material cool beneath me, straps fastened with practiced precision. Lights from emergency vehicles cast red and white flashes across the pavement, catching on a stain near my name tape. Brooks. The letters darkened by what could have been the end of my story before dawn ever came. I turned my head slightly, watching the road where headlights had vanished moments earlier. I could not see the shooter now, but I felt the weight of intent hanging in the silent space they left behind. Not a random act, not a stranger making noise in the dark. A precision moment, a planned one. As medics lifted me into the vehicle, one leaned close, voice low but firm. You are going to be okay. We have you. The reassurance steadied me more than the pressure bandage did. The back of the ambulance smelled of disinfectant and canvas, familiar in its own way. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between siren wails, grounding myself in the rhythm. Images flickered through my mind, not of war zones or missions, but of childhood stares, of whispered envy, of a laugh that never felt warm. I pushed it away. Not yet. Focus stayed on breathing, on staying conscious, on surviving. Clarity came and went like waves, but resolve held steady. Tomorrow, I was supposed to stand tall in uniform as the Army honored years of dedication. Tonight, someone tried to erase that future, but they failed. I was still breathing, still present. And the moment I felt the ambulance turn toward Womack Army Medical Center, I knew something else with absolute certainty. Whoever had fired those shots underestimated the wrong soldier. I was not broken. I was prepared. And survival in the end is a form of defiance. The ride to Womack Army Medical Center felt both endless and strangely brief, as if time folded in on itself somewhere between siren bursts and the sharp sting of antiseptic pads. Voices came and went above me, professional, steady, practiced in urgency. The doors swung open and fluorescent lights washed over my face. Boots rushed against tile. Hands guided the stretcher. Someone called out vitals. Someone else adjusted the pressure on my shoulder, and the air smelled like metal disinfectant in the faint, sterile chill that always clings to military hospitals at night. They cut away fabric with efficient precision. My uniform, once crisp and pressed in anticipation of a milestone, was now torn and soaked, the name Brooks still visible through the stain. A nurse murmured reassurance while a doctor examined the wound with calm focus. I answered questions on pain level and dizziness, recited my name, rank, and birth date as if it were another drill. The bullet had passed clean through soft tissue, a fraction of an inch from causing irreversible damage. Lucky again, they said. I nodded, letting the word sit like an uninvited visitor. Luck felt like too small a concept to explain survival when intention had been so clear. When the immediate scramble slowed and I was moved to a quiet room for monitoring, I felt adrenaline seep away, leaving clarity and fatigue woven together. The hum of medical machines became background noise. A nurse adjusted my sling and whispered that someone from CID was waiting. Of course they were. A shooting on base is not something handled gently. It is an alarm, a ripple through command, a threat to order. Investigators move quickly, not just for justice but for unity. The Army protects its own, and it investigates its own. Special Agent Torres entered with a presence that felt both respectful and unyielding. He wore civilian clothes, but the posture gave him away. Calm authority, observant eyes, a notebook tucked under one arm. "Major Brooks," he said, voice even. "I am here to gather an initial statement. Are you up to answering questions?" I nodded. Pain existed, but clarity mattered more. Speaking truth mattered more. He sat near the foot of the bed, not too close, not distant. I recognized the approach: create space, reduce pressure, maintain control of environment. He began methodically. Did I see anyone? Did I hear footsteps? Did I notice a vehicle? Did I have any personal conflicts on base? Any recent disputes? I answered with steady tone, each word shaped by discipline rather than emotion. No, nothing obvious. Nothing memorable. Nothing that would explain a silenced road and headlights cutting out like a predator crouching in darkness. And then he asked the question. Duty demands. Do you have reason to believe someone you know could have done this? Loyalty rose, first instinctive, automatic. The impulse to protect family, to keep private history buried, to dismiss suspicion as imagination. But another instinct followed close behind. The one forged in intelligence briefings. The one trained to recognize patterns. The one sharpened by years of reading truth in silence and motives in shadows. A face flickered in my mind like a memory pressing against glass. Erica. Not as a child, not with scraped knees or braids. As an adult, eyes sharp with envy, voice laced with resentment. She refused to examine laughter that sometimes sounded like triumph rather than joy. I pushed it away. Not because I did not believe it, because belief hurt more than the wound. Torres watched me carefully, reading not just my words, but my hesitation. People always give something away. A shift in tone, a change in breathing, a pause too long to be casual. Did you think of someone just now? The question cut clean. Not accusatory, not gentle, just precise. My loyalty to uniform wrestled with loyalty to blood, and neither felt steady. I inhaled slowly, holding my composure. I cannot speculate. It was the safe answer, the trained answer, the one that protected reputation and dignity and memory. But it felt thin, fragile, like gauze pressed against a wound too deep. Torres did not push. He simply nodded, wrote something in his notebook, then lifted his eyes again. You have served long enough to know that threats rarely come without warning. If something crosses your mind later, call me. We follow evidence, not guesses, but intuition matters. Intuition. That quiet alarm soldiers learn to trust, even when logic trails behind. I knew what intuition whispered. I just was not ready to say the words aloud. Speaking them would make them real, and reality would bruise in places deeper than flesh. He asked about my route, my timing, my routine. I gave the facts. He asked if I felt I had been followed. I hesitated again. Not because I doubted the memory of gravel shifting, or the flick of headlights cutting out, or the prickle at the back of my neck hours earlier, but because admitting that meant admitting vulnerability. Soldiers protect. We do not confess fear easily, even when it stands in plain view. Eventually, he closed his notebook and rose. Rest tonight. Someone will remain outside your door until further notice. He paused. Congratulations on your promotion tomorrow, Major. The timing is not lost on me. He left quietly, boots soft against linoleum, the door clicking shut with measured finality. I lay against the pillow, staring at ceiling tiles, breathing steady. Duty carved into bone. Loyalty pressed into habit. Yet doubt lingered, settling into my chest like a memory I could not shake. I thought of Erica's voice earlier. So, what time exactly? Would not want to miss the spectacle. And the way she said careful like accusation wearing a joke. I closed my eyes. Family is supposed to be sanctuary, not battlefield, but some wounds come from the direction you spend your whole life facing unguarded. The room felt still and sterile. The air hummed softly, machines whispering steady rhythm. Outside, footsteps paced alert and ready. Protection, vigilance, preparation for what came next. I turned my head toward the dim light spilling through the door window, and the truth settled quietly in my chest. Safety existed in walls and armed patrols and military order. But danger, real danger, had come from a place no perimeter could secure. I was alive. I was guarded. But something deeper than flesh had been pierced. And tomorrow, when I stood in uniform before the world, I would do so knowing the first shot aimed at me in my life's most honorable moment had not come from an enemy abroad. It might have come from someone who once shared my crib and my childhood table. Loyalty can be sacred, or it can be a wound disguised as duty. I lay still awake and understood that truth had already chosen its side. Morning broke without warmth. Sunlight spilled through the blinds in narrow stripes, too clean, too bright for the heaviness sitting in my chest. Nurses moved in and out with quiet efficiency, checking vitals, adjusting the sling, offering water and measured comfort. My phone sat on the bedside table, dark and still, like it was holding its breath. Today should have been medals and photographs, handshakes and speeches. Instead, I lay in a hospital bed with gauze taped to my shoulder, the echo of gunfire still ringing in places that adrenaline had not managed to numb. The army continues even when an individual pauses. Down the hall, boots marched, radios clicked, and the cadence of military life carried on without hesitation. Honor does not wait, but justice does not rush either. Special Agent Torres returned briefly mid-morning, his expression unchanged, the kind that suggested gears turning behind the eyes, processing, connecting, eliminating. We are running ballistic comparisons, he said. Spent casing recovered near scene. No prints. But we will find something. Shooters leave marks one way or another. I nodded, offering nothing more than facts he already had. He did not ask again if I remembered anyone specific. That silence felt heavier than questions. After he left, I stared out the small hospital window at the flag rising outside. Soldiers saluted. Duty continued. My body felt anchored to the bed, but my mind paced like it was trying to wear a path into the floor. Late afternoon, my phone buzzed once, a vibration so small yet sharp it cut through the sterile quiet. Unknown number. For a second, instinct told me someone was checking on me, offering support, acknowledging the weight of what happened. But CID numbers do not save themselves in your contacts. I answered. Major Brooks, a clipped voice said, "This is Sergeant Lewis with CID Forensics. We have preliminary results from evidence collection." My hand tightened around the phone. "Go ahead. We recovered trace biological material from the asphalt near your position and from torn fibers of your uniform," he continued. We ran the first panel through our rapid DNA analyzer. My heartbeat slowed into something thick and deliberate. Military installations have access to advanced systems normally reserved for major federal investigations. DNA does not lie. Neither does silence. We identified a partial match. Female. Relative. The room did not tilt this time. It compressed, drawing tight around me like the air had thickened. The world outside existed in clean lines and order. The world inside my chest collapsed without sound. Relative. That word carried weight more cutting than bullet or bone. And then the voice continued. "We are initiating a database cross-reference. Standard next-of-kin genetic records from medical archives." I forced my voice steady. "Understood." A pause. "We will call again when confirmation finalizes." He hung up and the quiet returned, like a blanket tossed too quickly over a fire, smothering heat but not extinguishing it. I stared at my screen at my reflection in the black glass. The face of a soldier marked not by blood now, but by truth, pushing against the last fragile walls I had built around family. I set the phone down gently, afraid if I moved too fast, the world would split open again. Hours passed like mist dragging across the ground, slow, heavy, aimless. I drifted between alertness and memory, replaying childhood kitchen tiles, school hallway, whispers the feel of pine stairs under my palms as a 12-year-old. Erica's voice weaving through the years like thread pulling too tight. Late evening light filtered yellow across the floor when my phone vibrated again. This time, a secure CID contact flashed on the screen. I answered, breath held, before the words even came. "Major Brooks. We completed genomic cross-matching. Results confirmed." My throat tightened, though I did not speak. "DNA sample from your uniform and recovered residue matches your registered next-of-kin profile. Female sibling." He paused as if choosing precision over softness. "Name identified. Erica Brooks." A sound left my chest that was not a gasp, not a sob, but a hollow exhale that felt like losing something I had spent a lifetime fighting to keep hope. "Thank you," I managed. Procedure formality slipped into habit. "Understood. I will cooperate fully. We will proceed with formal charges," he said. "Expect contact soon. Security measures remain in place." When the call ended, I stared at the silent phone until the letters on the screen blurred. Then another notification blinked. A text. Unknown number again. I opened it. Short. Clinical. A screenshot from the CID database confirmation panel time-stamped, and beneath it one line. Erica Brooks. There it was. Not memory, not fear, not suspicion. Proof. My hand closed around the phone tighter, like gripping an anchor in a storm. My pulse was steady, but something deeper trembled. Something that once believed blood guaranteed loyalty, that family meant safety. I leaned back into the pillow shoulder, throbbing under the sling, and let truth settle like winter frost across ground that once felt familiar. Erica knew my route. Erica knew my schedule. Erica had called yesterday, voice curved like a knife wrapped in silk. Must be nice. Would not want to miss the spectacle. And then, headlights cutting out on a quiet road. A gun raised by someone who had shared my crib, my childhood table, my birthday. I closed my eyes, not to escape, but to absorb. Betrayal feels sharp in movies. In real life, it lands dull and cold before the pain rises. I breathed slowly the way I had on the pavement. In, hold, out, control first, emotion later. The nurse entered quietly to check my bandage. She saw my face froze and whispered, "Are you all right?" I opened my eyes and answered with calm I did not feel yet. "Yes, I am. The truth has arrived." She nodded, unsure what that meant, but recognizing tone soldiers use when resolve locks into place. When she left, I let the quiet stretch one last time before I whispered into the still room. "You tried to end me before the world honored me. But I am still here. And now the army knows too. My shoulder ached, my heart steadied, and a new fire rose inside my chest. I had walked battlefields abroad, but this would be a different kind of war. One fought with truth discipline and the resolve to stand even when family becomes threat. Erica had taken her shot, but the story was not hers to finish. It was mine. Truth does not arrive like thunder. It settles slowly, then suddenly, every memory rearranges itself into a pattern you should have seen sooner. As I lay in that hospital room, the curtain drawn halfway and the hum of hallway chatter drifting in moments from years ago surfaced like film reels snapping into focus. I remembered being 16, sitting at our small kitchen table with a stack of college brochures. ROTC pamphlets spread neatly my notebook full of scholarship deadlines. Erica sauntered in flipping her hair, rolling her eyes at my preparation like discipline was a flaw. She smirked and said, "Ambition looks funny on you." I had laughed awkwardly back then, trying to make it a joke, but even at 16 the comment burrowed under my skin. She did not say, "I am proud of you." She said, "How dare you want more?" Childhood had trained me to shrug off her tone, her sly digs disguised as sisterly teasing. Now those lines cut in reverse. Not harmless. Foreshadowing. Another memory surfaced next, vivid in a way trauma tends to preserve detail. Senior year of high school, I brought home an acceptance letter from Carolina. ROTC scholarship included. My mother clapped politely, congratulating me with a distant smile that said she still wasn't sure what Army life meant. Erica. She stared at the paper in my hand, jaw tight. Then she walked past and muttered, "Guess you think you're better than everyone now." I had frozen in the doorway, heart sinking. I thought success would bring us closer. I believed if I worked hard enough, she would feel inspired too. The irony now felt sharp enough to bruise. Erica did not want to rise with me. She wanted me rooted beside her so she never had to confront her own choices. More memories fell into place. My first year in ROTC, when she called crying because her boyfriend had cheated. I rushed home on a weekend to comfort her. I spent money I didn't have to take her out to make her laugh. By Sunday night, she was smiling again until I told her I needed to return early Monday for physical training. She went cold instantly. Must be nice pretending to serve the country. Back then, I brushed it off. Family tension, I told myself. Stress. Immaturity. But looking back, that was resentment sprouting roots. Post-deployment was worse. I returned from Kuwait steadier, older in ways that sand and time carve into bone. My military savings, carefully built for a first house, disappeared one summer. I discovered it by accident when the bank called to confirm a withdrawal. Erica's name was on the transfer. I confronted her gently, believing there had to be misunderstanding. She didn't deny it. She only shrugged and said, "You never needed it as badly as I did." No apology, no remorse, just entitlement cloaked in familiarity. I covered the loss, told no one, told myself loyalty meant forgiveness, that family deserved grace. Now I could see what it truly meant. She had seen my success as her resource, not her inspiration. She took because she believed she was owed. Later came the smallest incidents that in hindsight spoke the loudest. College sophomore year. I introduced her to a boyfriend while home for break. He was kind, steady, the type who admired discipline rather than feared it. 2 weeks later, he ended things abruptly. No explanation. Years later, after Daniel died and I visited Erica in a rare moment of vulnerability, she slipped. Oh, him, he messaged me first. "I just made sure he saw the real you." She said it smug like sabotage was loyalty. Now the meaning struck. She felt powerful when she could take from me money, relationships, peace. She did not want what I built. She wanted proof she could break it. These memories stacked like evidence in a folder I never meant to open. I remembered the first moment I ever truly questioned her love, not the dramatic kind seen in movies, but a quiet, devastating realization. I was 22, freshly commissioned home in uniform for the first time. Erica looked at me, eyes scanning the rank, the crease of my dress blouse, the shine on my shoes. I expected pride. Instead, there was calculation, competition. She hugged me, but her body was stiff, like I had stolen something from her simply by existing. That night, she told our mother I had changed, that I thought I was important now. She said it loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. And I remember sitting on my childhood bed, staring at my shoes, realizing something that hollowed me out. She did not love me. She loved winning. She did not celebrate my growth. She measured it against her stagnation and resented every inch. Lying in that hospital bed, I saw it clearly. She had never been a sister in the way that word should mean. She had been a rival wearing a family mask, competitor disguised as companion. I had spent my life offering loyalty to someone who sharpened every blessing into a blade. The evidence had been there from the beginning. A shove on the stairs mistaken as play, words disguised as humor, support turned extraction, affection used as leverage, until jealousy matured into strategy and strategy into violence. When someone resents your breath, your heartbeat becomes competition. I had survived foreign conflict zones trained to spot enemies cloaked in dust and distance. Yet the most dangerous one had been at my side my whole life, learning me, studying me, waiting. The truth hurt, yes, but it also cleared my vision with brutal clarity. Erica never wanted to walk beside me. She wanted to watch me fall. And when envy could no longer be fed by small wounds, she chose a bullet. In that realization, grief settled not for what happened, but for what never truly existed. A sisterhood I had imagined, a bond I had nurtured alone. Trust misplaced is not innocence. It is sacrifice, and I had sacrificed enough. Tomorrow, there would be no more denial, no more silence disguised as loyalty. The evidence was not just in DNA, it was written in years of moments I had refused to see. Now I saw all of them, and seeing is the beginning of justice. The call came just after sunrise when the hospital halls were still quiet and the world outside felt washed clean by early light. Special Agent Torres entered my room with a controlled urgency that told me things had moved quickly overnight. He closed the door behind him and stood at the foot of my bed, jaw-tight eyes sharp with purpose. "We located her," he said. "A motel off Bragg Boulevard. Room registered under a fake name, but surveillance confirms identity. She checked in late last night." The words settled over me like frost. Erica had not fled far. She stayed close, waiting, assuming the outcome she wanted. Torres continued, "We are planning the apprehension now. I need to know if you want to be present." He said it without hesitation, as if he already knew my answer. "Some decisions are muscle memory." I nodded. "Yes." His eyes held a flicker of respect the kind soldiers share when witnessing quiet resolve. "You will remain secure," he said. "You observe only. We do not put victims in harm's path." Victim. A word that felt foreign despite its truth. I was many things in that moment. Officer, widow, sister survivor, but victim sat differently. It did not weaken me. It clarified the battlefield. By midday, I was in a secure vehicle escorted by CID personnel. My shoulder ached with each bump in the road, but pain had become background noise. Focus replaced it. The motel appeared like so many outside base perimeters, sun-bleached paint, flickering sign doors facing the parking lot. A place where people hid from life or stored secrets in blanket corners and cigarette smoke. Agents moved in formation, silent, precise, each motion a testament to training. I sat in the back, heart-steady, breath-controlled, watching through tinted glass. My sling tugged at my shoulder, a sharp reminder of the bullet's path. Torres approached her door, voice firm. "CID, open the door." Silence. Then footsteps, frantic, small, familiar. The door cracked open. Erica's face appeared, mascara-smudged hair tangled, a panic that did not look like remorse but like fear of being caught, not fear of what she had done. When she saw Torres, she froze. When she saw me in the car behind him, her face drained of color. The world paused. For one heartbeat, I saw the little girl she once was, afraid of being exposed. Then her eyes hardened. A different kind of fear. Control slipping. Power lost. She tried to slam the door. Agents moved faster, pushing inside voices, sharp commands firm. "Hands behind your back. Do not resist." She struggled not with strength but desperation, screaming my name like it was accusation. "Evelyn, let me explain, Evelyn." Her voice cracked, shrill, frantic. I did not move. I did not speak. I watched the arrest with quiet stillness, hand resting on my sling. They brought her out moments later, wrists cuffed, tears streaking her cheeks, but fury burning through them like acid. She looked at me as if betrayal were mine, not hers. As if living had offended her. "How could you?" She spat, breath shaking. "You were supposed to trust me." The delusion in her voice chilled me more than the shot had. Torres maintained control, guiding her toward the vehicle. But Erica twisted eyes locking onto mine. Something snapped in her expression, resentment giving way to obsession, jealousy hardening into raw confession. "It was supposed to be you or me," she screamed, voice cracking like glass under pressure. That was the moment truth left her lips, not whispered, not implied, spoken like a final strike, a choice she believed existed, a battlefield she created, a war she assumed she could win. I stepped from the car slowly despite doctors' warnings and the ache tearing down my arm. One agent moved to steady me, but I lifted my good hand gently, signaling I was steady. I walked toward her, not out of hate, but closure. She stared, chest-heaving eyes wild, and I finally spoke the line that had waited decades to be born. "I survived worse than you overseas." Her face cracked, not fear, but disbelief. The realization that I was not broken, that I had not fallen, that she had failed. Agents guided her to the back seat. She still shouted, voice echoing across hot pavement. "I should have been you. I deserved more." They shut the door, muting her rage, but the words lingered like smoke. Torres looked at me. "Are you all right, Major?" I exhaled slowly, letting truth settle like anchor and liberation at once. "Yes, I am." He nodded once, a gesture that was part acknowledgement, part respect. Some arrests solve the crime. Others reveal its beginning. As they drove her away, sirens silent but authority loud in posture and presence, I stood in the parking lot and felt years lift off me like weight unstrapped after a long march. The wind stirred faintly, carrying pine and asphalt and something else freedom. I did not cry. I did not shake. The army had taught me how to face conflict. Life had taught me how to endure betrayal. Combination forged something immovable. Standing there, sling tied around my shoulder, I did not feel wounded. I felt awake. The war I never wanted was over, and I had stood through every round. Some battles are fought abroad. Some are fought at home. The hardest ones, they are fought inside your own bloodline, but survival has a quiet sound. It is breath steadying, shoulders rising, eyes forward, and the knowledge you did not break where someone else chose to. I returned to the car, pain throbbing, but dignity untouched. When the door closed behind me, I whispered not to her, but for myself, an oath renewed. This ends now. And it did. The ceremony was postponed 48 hours, not canceled, not quietly moved. Delayed as if the army itself understood that recognition means little if fear is allowed to steal its moment. When the new schedule came through, I sat on the edge of my hospital bed, dress uniform laid out beside me, sling already matched with polished brass and crisp creases. Pain lingered dull and persistent, but pain is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is proof. The morning of the ceremony, I walked across the parade field with measured steps. Soldiers turned their heads not in pity but acknowledgement. They had heard enough to know courage wore a different face this time. Not the dust-covered face of deployment, but the steady calm of someone who walked through betrayal and still stood tall. My dress coat rested across my shoulders, fabric taut on one side, sling supporting my arm on the other. Ribbons caught the sunlight quiet testimony. The wind moved steadily across the field, carrying murmurs, boots, shifting creaking chairs where families sat. Cameras lined the edge local press installation media military public affairs. Word travels fast in quiet towns built around bases. A soldier shot on home soil is news. A soldier standing again 2 days later is a story. When the band began its slow, deliberate cadence, I inhaled deeply. Pain sparked through my shoulder, but I did not flinch. Strength is not the absence of pain. It is endurance in spite of it. Colonel Hayes stepped to the podium, perfectly pressed uniform jaw set with pride and something else defiance on my behalf. He did not open with my achievements or rank. He opened with truth wrapped in respect. Major Brooks stands before you today, not only because she served her country abroad, but because she faced a different kind of battlefield here at home. A ripple moved through the crowd, a collective exhale. His voice carried steady, each syllable measured like salutes at a funeral. Courage isn't only in combat zones. Sometimes it's at home where the enemy is not a uniformed threat, but silence, betrayal, and the temptation to break. My throat tightened, not from sadness, from validation. He continued speaking, not as a commander, but as a witness. This officer demonstrated bravery, discipline, and honor under circumstances no soldier expects within their own community. Her resilience reminds us that integrity is not tested only by war, but by life. He motioned me forward. Each step echoed in my body a heartbeat of meaning. When I reached him, he held my promotion orders, hands steady, eyes fierce with pride. Evelyn Brooks, effective immediately, you are promoted to the rank of Major United States Army. Voices rose applause, not loud or chaotic, but resonant. Respect has its own volume. My new rank slid onto my shoulder with careful movement to avoid the wounded side. Colonel Hayes leaned in just enough that only I heard him. You earned this twice. Once through service. Once through survival. The band began again. Cheering followed as I saluted, not dramatic, not forced, but solemn in oath renewed in silence louder than words. Photographers captured the moment. Flashbulbs burst like quiet fireworks. In a row of seats near the front, Daniel's parents sat with hands clasped, tears held back by pride. They had lost a son, but they never lost family. I looked at them and offered a small nod. They returned it as if to say, we see you standing, and he would have too. Then the ceremony shifted. Public affairs moved forward, microphones lifted, cameras angled. A reporter asked what courage meant to me now. I answered simply, courage is knowing who you are when someone tries to take it from you. Cameras clicked. A screen near the podium shifted, broadcasting local coverage. I glanced at it only long enough to see the image that came next. Erica's mugshot, stiff hair, blank eyes, anger barely masked by a tilt of chin. The headline beneath it read, Twin arrested in attempted murder of Army Major. There it was, the truth in clean font and harsh lighting. The story could have ended in whispers. Instead, it stood in sunlight undeniable. The crowd murmured again, a different sound, now shock, sympathy, outrage. Some shook their heads, some crossed their arms. Most simply looked at me with a depth I had not seen before, as if understanding that battlefields take many shapes. A journalist asked, how do you feel seeing this today? I held my chin steady. I feel grateful to still be standing. I feel honored to serve. And I feel relieved the truth is no longer a burden carried in silence. No vengeance, no bitterness, just clarity. Justice is not rage. It is light. When the national anthem played, I stood at attention, good hand over my heart, sling tight across my chest. Wind caught the flag and lifted it high above us, fabric waving like breath across sky. Tears did not fall. My face remained steady, not because emotion was absent, but because dignity held it in place. Afterwards, soldiers lined up to shake my hand. Some spoke voices low. Proud of you, ma'am. You set the standard. That took strength. One young private whispered, family shouldn't be the enemy. I met her eyes and answered softly, no, but sometimes truth demands we protect ourselves anyway. Camera shutters kept firing. The story spread. On screens across the field, across living rooms, across feeds, my picture appeared beside hers. Honor beside envy, duty beside resentment. Standing there, sling and medals catching the afternoon sun, I understood something vital. Surviving the bullet was only part of the story. Standing in uniform afterward, that was the victory. Public truth did not shame me. It freed me. And as the field emptied and the press packed up equipment, I breathed slowly, steady, and sure. Not as the wounded twin, not as the target, as Major Evelyn Brooks, the sister who lived, the soldier who stood, and the woman who finally let the world see the truth she carried alone for too long. The shot did not take my life, but it took my silence, and that was a triumph I claimed with every breath. 2 weeks passed after the ceremony, and life settled into a rhythm both familiar and newly sharpened. Physical therapy sessions, follow-ups with CID, quiet evenings in my on-base housing where the silence no longer felt like tension held in my lungs, but like air I finally deserved to breathe. On my kitchen table sat a stack of cards from soldiers, spouses, retirees, even strangers from out of state. Some thanked me for my service. Some thanked me for surviving. Some wrote about their own family betrayals, their own quiet wars behind closed doors. I read every one. Healing does not always arrive in sweeping revelations. Sometimes it comes handwritten and mailed with postage stamps and shaky cursive. Then one afternoon, a manila envelope slid through my mail slot. My name printed in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. Return address Cumberland County Detention Center. My breath stilled not from fear, but from recognition. Some ghosts do not knock. They simply return, certain they still have keys to your life. I carried the envelope to the table, set it down beside sympathy cards and military commendation paperwork. I did not open it right away. Instead, I poured a cup of coffee steady and slow, letting steam rise like ritual. Finally, I sat and slid a finger under the seal. The paper felt heavy, as if ink itself carried weight. I unfolded the letter. Evelyn, it began in Erica's looping script, too elegant for the chaos it birthed. You cannot ignore me. We are sisters. Nothing changes that. You owe me. I paused there, letting those 3 words sit like rusted nails on clean wood. You owe me. As if blood were currency. As if betrayal earned debt. The letter continued. I need your help. The lawyers are useless. No one understands my side. You know I didn't mean for things to go this far. You know how life pushed me. Family sticks together. You know I wouldn't be here if you really cared. I deserve better than this. They treat me like a criminal. A soft laugh escaped before I could stop it, humorless and quiet. Treat me like a criminal. As though the act she committed was secondary to the consequences she now faced. Beneath the whining justification was something even colder. Entitlement. Not remorse. Not self-reflection. A belief that the world had wronged her and I was meant to fix it. The words tightened near the end, strokes digging deeper into paper. Help me. Talk to them. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. We can put this behind us. I stared at that last sentence long enough to feel my chest tighten, not from sympathy, but from a sadness that had matured into acceptance. We can put this behind us. There was no we. There never had been. For years, I had mistaken proximity for bond and obligation for love. But honesty requires clarity, and clarity had arrived with gunfire. Erica still believed family meant forged loyalty regardless of consequence. She still believed pain erased itself when she demanded it. She still believed survival was betrayal if she was not the one surviving more. I folded the letter once, twice, then again. Not angrily, neatly. With the same precision I used to fold uniforms and crease maps. Ceremony for closure. I walked outside to my patio, the late afternoon North Carolina sun, warm on my skin. Pine branches swayed slow and easy, as if the world had no idea how close it had come to losing me. I lit a match, held it to the corner of the paper, and watched flame catch ink. Yellow licked black, curling lines into ash. The fire flared, then softened, and the letter crumbled into delicate gray flakes. I watched until the last ember died, not out of spite, out of respect for truth finally spoken. I brushed ash into a ceramic bowl and whispered a sentence meant for myself, not her. Some ties are severed long before we cut them. The quiet felt heavier now, but cleaner. No lingering weight. No question left unanswered, just truth and its aftermath. That evening, I sat on my porch as dusk settled, cicadas humming their summer chorus, street lamps flickering on across the neighborhood. My sling rested across my lap, the dull ache in my shoulder, not unwelcome. Pain is proof. It means I lived. My phone buzzed. A message from a fellow officer. Heard she wrote you. Don't let the guilt games start. You didn't betray family. She did. I typed back slowly. I know. Then another message came. You stood taller than most ever have to. Proud of you. I set my phone aside and let the words settle like armor. For the first time in a long time, my heartbeat felt unburdened steady, not because I forced it to be, but because peace had space to settle. The audacity of her letter did not wound me. It clarified the war she had always been fighting alone in her own bitterness. Her plea was not for forgiveness. It was for my silence, my obedience, my return to a role I no longer accepted. I owed her nothing, not explanations, not protection, not rescue. I owed truth to myself. And now I had given it space to breathe. Night deepened across the base. A helicopter swept overhead, lights blinking. Soldiers laughed somewhere down the street, sound floating like freedom. I leaned back, exhaled slowly, and let the night hold me. She had fired a bullet believing survival had only one seat. But survival expands for those who choose life over loyalty to destruction. She wanted me silent. Instead, I stood. She wanted me gone. Instead, I lived. And life given back is not something I waste. I closed my eyes and whispered a promise to the quiet. I will never carry your burden again. Then I opened them steady and sure and watched the stars settle into place above a world I almost never got to see again. I did not burn the past in anger. I burned it to light my way forward. Courthouses have a way of stripping ego from the air. Marble floors echoing footsteps, rows of benches where strangers sit with hands folded, waiting for justice to speak. I had stood in briefing rooms and combat information centers and promotion halls under flags and sunlight, but walking into that courtroom felt heavier than any battlefield I had crossed. Duty follows you everywhere. But here, truth did too. I sat in the front row beside CID personnel and a base liaison assigned to ensure victim protocol. My dress uniform fit stiff over my healing shoulder sling, adjusted carefully to maintain dignity, not pity. People watched me enter, not with curiosity, but with recognition. They knew what this day meant. Across the aisle, the door opened. Erica walked in wearing county-issued beige wrists cuffed, eyes darting around the room as if searching for someone to blame for gravity itself. She looked smaller than the girl I grew up beside. Not physically. Resentment does not shrink bodies, but smaller in presence, hollowed by the collapse of her own illusion. When her gaze found mine, it did not soften. It hardened. Not shame, not remorse. Only the raw disbelief of someone forced to face consequences she never imagined would reach her. The judge entered and everyone rose. She was a woman in her early 60s, posture-straight expression carved from decades of seeing the best and worst of people stand before her. This was not military court, but the federal system works closely with base jurisdiction when crimes cross that line. Attempted murder, weapon discharge near a federal installation, premeditation. Every charge read like an echo of a moment I lived and survived. The prosecution laid out evidence with clean precision ballistics. DNA confirmation from the uniform cell tower pings surveillance cameras showing Erica's vehicle near my running route. Her motel registration under a false name. Text messages hinting at envy like it was currency she lived by. I listened spine straight, breathing even. When the defense spoke, they leaned into desperation. Childhood trauma, emotional instability, feelings of abandonment, financial insecurity. Every excuse built a wall she had hoped would shield her from accountability. But walls crumble when truth hits hard enough. The judge called for the victim impact statement. I rose slowly, one hand braced against the bench sling, hugging my shoulder like a reminder, and a medal both. I walked to the podium, each step steady, controlled, deliberate. Just like the night I refused to die. When I spoke, my voice was not angry. Rage is easy. Dignity is discipline. Your Honor, I began. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I looked briefly at Erica, not to wound her, but to ensure she did not mistake my composure for weakness. My name is Major Evelyn Brooks. I serve my country. I protect my soldiers. And I survived an attack committed not by a foreign enemy, but by someone who shared my home, my childhood, and my blood. A quiet ripple moved through the courtroom. I continued. My service taught me courage in war zones. My sister taught me courage in silence. She tried to take my life the night before the Army celebrated it. She chose envy over love, resentment over sisterhood, violence over truth. I paused not to dramatize, but to breathe with intention. I stand here not because I am unbreakable, but because I refused to let her break me. I will continue to wear this uniform. I will continue to serve, and I will not carry guilt for her choices any longer. I looked at the judge, then the room. Justice is not revenge. It is restoring balance. Today, balance returns. I stepped back, spine straight, heartbeat steady. For the first time in my life, I felt the full weight lift years of protecting her image, making excuses, burying bruises of the heart. The judge watched me quietly for a long moment, as if measuring not just my words, but my strength. Then she spoke. "Ms. Brooks, your statement is noted." She turned her gaze to Erica. "You chose harm where loyalty should have lived. You exploited trust where gratitude should have grown. You targeted someone who earned honor through sacrifice and integrity." The courtroom held its breath. "Service is honor," the judge continued. "You brought disgrace, and today this court holds you accountable." Erica's face twisted not in grief, but in disbelief. She still did not understand the difference between being seen and being right. Sentencing followed clear and firm. Years in federal custody. Time added for the use of a firearm in a premeditated attack on federal grounds. Mandatory rehabilitation programs, no contact orders. As the judge read each term, Erica shook her head, whispering furious fragments. "This isn't fair. She ruined my life. She owes me." I felt no triumph, only closure. Agents escorted her away. She tried to look at me again, eyes pleading now, not for forgiveness, but for the power she lost. I met her gaze for the last time and did not flinch. She mouthed a final sentence. "We were supposed to be together." I answered in silence, lips barely moving. "I did not leave you. You tried to erase me." And then she was gone, escorted through a side door, shackles clinking, her footsteps swallowed by the hallway. When the courtroom emptied, the CID liaison asked if I needed anything. I shook my head. "No. I have everything I need." Outside, sunlight hit like a blessing. Warm, quiet, steady. Reporters waited at a distance. Soldiers passing by paused to nod. Civilians offered small smiles. But I did not need applause. Justice had spoken. Not loudly, but clearly. And clarity is a kind of peace. My shoulder ached as I stepped down the courthouse stairs. But pain is not always a scar. Sometimes it is proof you stood through the storm. Justice had been served. Not as vengeance, but as a boundary. A line that finally held. And I walked forward not as wounded twin, but as Major Evelyn Brooks. The life she tried to take remained mine. And I would live it. Fully. Without her shadow ever touching my steps again. Healing does not arrive like victory. It arrives like breath, slow and gradual, unnoticed, until you suddenly realize you can exhale again without trembling inside. After the sentencing, life did not shift in dramatic bursts. It unfolded quietly like dawn spreading instead of lightning striking. People speak of closure as though it is a door slamming shut. Truth is softer. Closure is the slow turning of a lock after years of leaving it open for someone who never deserved the key. Therapy became a part of my week, not a sign of weakness but of discipline. Combat teaches survivors to push through pain. Betrayal teaches survivors to stop pretending pain doesn't exist. My therapist, Dr. Bennett, sat across from me with the calm presence of someone who understood what unspoken burdens weigh the heaviest. Her office smelled faintly of cedar and warmth, not sterile like hospitals, not cold like interrogation rooms. Here, silence was permission, not punishment. She never rushed me. She never filled silence for me. She let me find words I had avoided for decades. I told her about childhood mornings where quiet meant safety, about staircases and swallowed fears, about pinning my hope on someone who carved resentment with a smile, about that night on the base road and the knowledge that the hand behind the trigger once held mine in a crib. And she listened not as someone trying to fix, but as someone giving me space to lay the weight down one truth at a time. Recovery did not come in confessions alone. It came in reflection, recognizing that strength is not never breaking, but choosing not to stay broken. Some nights I still heard gunfire in memory, not battlefield echoes, but the singular sharp crack on home soil. I learned not to fight the memory. I learned to understand it. Trauma becomes a chapter, not a definition, when you face it rather than flee it. Rebuilding trust began quietly, too. Not trust in others, first, trust in myself. Betrayal steals confidence long before it steals peace. I needed to believe again that I could see people clearly, that my instincts remained sound, that love was not a weakness waiting to be used against me. I practiced small steps, saying no without apology, accepting help without suspicion, allowing silence without fearing its meaning. Some days felt heavy, but heaviness is not failure. It is the body remembering weight it carried too long. At night, I sometimes paused outside the military chapel. Lights glowed from within like quiet sanctuary. I never became someone who needed to speak prayers aloud, but I found comfort in simply standing there, acknowledging a world larger than pain and duty combined. And then there was Daniel. Healing required facing not just the night I almost died, but the life I lived before loss carved me. On a clear Saturday with pine shadows stretching long across the cemetery grass, I drove to the veteran burial grounds where he rested. The headstone was simple, dignified, exactly as he wanted. I knelt slowly, sling removed, now movement easier, but still cautious. My fingers brushed his namestone, cool against skin. I had visited many times since he passed, but this time felt different. Not grief without breath, but conversation. I whispered updates like he was beside me, smiling that soft smile that always made the world feel gentler. I told him about the ceremony, about standing tall with one arm in a sling and a heart steadier than it had been in years. I told him justice had been done and that the truth was no longer something I carried alone like a wound. And I paused, letting wind move through trees, letting peace find me in the quiet. "You would have told me I was strong, long before I believed it," I murmured. "And maybe now I finally do." A bird landed nearby, looked at me for a moment, then flew off again as if delivering approval and moving on. I stayed until the sun dipped low, casting gold across headstones, bathing memory in warmth instead of ache. When I stood to leave, I did not feel like I was walking away from him. I felt like I was walking with everything he ever saw in me. Back at Fort Liberty, soldiers saluted as I passed. Some knew the story. Some only knew the rank and the scars. Respect looks the same either way, steady earned silent. My shoulder healed, strength returning with each stretch and push and lift. Scars do not fade from skin easily, and they fade from memory even slower. But scars are not shame. They are proof of endurance, proof of identity, proof that I lived when someone else wanted me erased. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in soft pinks and deep blues, I sat on my porch, hands resting on my knees. No sling, no tension coiled in my chest. A young soldier from my unit walked by and hesitated before approaching. "Ma'am, I heard about what happened. I just wanted to say your story. It helped some of us, shows we can get through things nobody sees." His sincerity held weight. I nodded and replied softly, "We get through by standing, and by asking for help when we need it." He smiled, saluted, and walked on. Moments like that reminded me why I stayed in uniform. Service is not just mission. It is example. It is quiet leadership. It is strength shared, not just strength shown. As dusk settled, I thought about my life in simple stages. The Army forged me. Family tested me. Truth freed me. Healing is not the absence of what hurt. It is the presence of what holds you together. Freedom did not arrive with the arrest. It arrived with acceptance. Acceptance that loving someone does not obligate you to drown for them. Acceptance that survival is not selfish. Acceptance that peace is earned, not handed. And in that acceptance, a new truth formed, steady as heartbeat. I did not lose a sister. I lost a threat. I did not walk away from family. I walked toward myself. I am still a soldier, still a widow, still a woman who loved and lost and stood again. But I am also something I had not been in a long time, my own protector. And as nighttime settled over Fort Liberty and porch lights glowed like quiet stars along the street, I sat back, breathed deeply, and finally let myself feel what survival truly tastes like. Not relief, not triumph. Peace. Real. Earned. Mine. If you've ever stood in a uniform or stood up after someone you trusted tried to break you, I hope my story reminded you of your strength. Service does not always happen on battlefields. Sometimes it happens in living rooms and courtrooms and quiet moments where you refuse to give up on yourself. If you served or if you've survived betrayal from someone who should have protected you, you are not alone. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you believe loyalty is earned, not inherited, leave a United States flag below and let this community stand with you.